Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Patrick Hogan, Managing Director at Honeywell Ventures. Patrick, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I don't know how atypical I might be, but I'll share the journey because I think there's some good learning points. But I think Nikolai kind of gets back to three areas that have struck me in my career. So I started with technology. I then got into commercialization. I like selling things. And then there has to be a strategy behind all those. So that's how I ended up here in the venture world just in the last year to do that. As a young person, I was very curious. And so I got in a lot of trouble. I used to take things apart. I would take apart my dad's stereo and then build a guitar amp with that. Or to my mom's chagrin, I actually built an electrolyzer cell in my bedroom while I was at high school. Caused a lot of noise and salt damage as well to do that. But I was trying to work out how things work. And that was my passion. And I was fortunate to go to university and got into molecules. And I love chemistry and how all that worked. And I found out I was pretty good at it. I could study. And more importantly, I really liked the application of that whole chemistry and molecular science. So I thought I was going to be an academic, Nicholas, and I ended up doing a PhD, but it was really applied. And it was in the area that was quite new at the time of MRI, so scanning. And so I had the great fun of building a lab, getting to play with some very big magnets and electronics. And by the way, I'm not a physicist. Playing around with some really cool chemicals and understanding how the body works. And every now and again, they let me loose on people. And I really got to see this whole ecosystem come together with the goal of obviously helping people get better quicker to do that. But I looked at around and as the life in academia, writing papers, teaching, I really enjoyed, but I wasn't super excited about it. So I got my first professional job, my real paid job, in today what we would call biotech or a biotech startup. We didn't call it that in those days, and I'm going to date myself, but it was last century, just to help you there with the calibration. I got to move from Europe to Santa Monica, and I thought, wow, this is my dream. And I was working in kind of clinical science and really getting involved in the area of diagnostics of diseases. And it was really cool until we had a sales meeting where the sellers said, this is really cool stuff, but no one's buying. They don't understand it. And I went, don't be silly. This stuff's easy and it works. And so I got out on the road and I started supporting sellers and getting involved with the customer. And of course, that was a giant awakening, right? Where you really hear what the real world wants and what customers are concerned about. And it was very different to what I thought in my lab to do that. So that was an area where I caught the buzz of technology and selling and getting a solution that wins for everybody, the customer, the company, as well as individually. And I found out I was more probably competitive than I thought, than I really thought I was going to be. So it got me more curious about how do products come to market. And I had a couple of roles in private equity with mainly science-based instrumentation type companies, and a lot of it in the oil and gas sector. So I had to retrain my domain, very international, got to work both onshore and offshore, which was really exciting, and ended up learning a lot more about, again, how do you build a strategy? How do you build a product line and take it all the way to market from a concept all the way through to commercialization and scale? And then got to learn the harder stuff about, gosh, there's a whole bunch of inventory from the previous family. How do you keep that product alive? How do you manage forecasts? How do you bring it to market? And really deliver, which corporations require, is on both growth and profit, while also keeping the customer happy and constantly feeding that innovation cycle to do that. So I grew up in the product world, Nicola, and then I had a kind of a coaching session and wanted to think a little bit more about getting into consultative services. So relatively early career in my late 30s, and retrained to be a business consultant and ended up working for a couple of energy companies, selling some really awesome technologies and capabilities, and got back into the US as well. So I was able to move around the world, get my family bedded down here in the States, which they've really enjoyed. And then again, realized that you have to keep being innovative. You have to keep driving big outcomes, profit and growth for your companies, all with the underpinning of technology. And I ended up back in a role through an acquisition. I actually got divested with the company, did my first and probably my only software.com company, which guess what?
Oh, you did.
I did. Didn't work. That's why I'm doing this job probably today. But I ended up coming back to one of the companies, private equity that I work with, and they asked me to help them get sold. And we got acquired by a big company. It was Honeywell. So that's how I joined Honeywell. And that was 20 years ago.
So tell us about empathy and why you think the acquisitions actually are relevant, this experience, for what you do today.
Yeah, always have to walk in someone else's shoes, right? To understand their world, their business, their context. And I think that's whether we're leaders of people and hiring teams or whether we're trying to get into a kind of a new technology or a new area to do that. The acquisition background, I think, really helped me because both our companies are very large and we're very hard to navigate and maybe a little scary. I think you and I have probably been in these companies for a while, and we can understand what it's like when a very large company goes and visits a small startup. And so we need to be empathetic with their time and their resource. They're very busy. They don't have a lot of time and energy to do industrial tourism, for example, right? And allow people to come in with no interest really to follow through. So try to be very keen about why is this a good fit for both of our teams? Why should we both invest together, people and time and knowledge share? And are we really going to sign that mutual NDA? And then when we do, what does that mean together? And be very respectful. A lot of people are worried about maybe contaminating or diluting IP. And that's something we're very rigorous about. We have a lot of IP we like to protect, and we're very respectful of others.
Let me move back to your journey and starting earlier with the educational part. You have a PhD, but you made a distinction to say it was an applied PhD. Tell me more about why that mattered and how it's helping you today as an investor.
Yeah. So I was student number one in a brand new laboratory, which was awesome. It was called medicinal chemistry in Cambridge, the old one, not the new one. And we had a lab, but the lab was empty. And I was student one, so I had to learn how to saw and put shelves up. I'm not very good with a saw or a hammer, so you definitely don't want me to help out with any home improvements to do that. So it got very applied. And then my boss was transitioning from Canada to the UK. He said, Patrick, I can't be there. You're going to have to help these very large NMR magnets and bring them into the lab and get them filled with liquid nitrogen. And I'm like, I've never done any of this before. So here I was in my early 20s with a checkbook, a saw, hard hat, doing planning permission to build out these new facilities. And I like that. I like getting my fingers dirty. And that's what I'm good at. I'm a starter. I'm probably not the guy to operate a factory at high speed every day, but I'll get things up and running. That's what I'm good at.
If I had forgotten the question I asked, I would think you just described how you created a startup. So let's call it a super applied PhD. And that leads to my next question, which is you mentioned about you also had experience in a startup and that didn't work out exactly the way you expected. How that experience and the challenges that came with it helped you?
Yeah, it really did. My startup was in the world of knowledge management, document management. So federating knowledge across large corporations like a big pharmaceutical company or an energy company. Many of these companies have people and research and assets all over the world, and they don't know what each other's working on. And so they miss out those areas to do that. This was in a world where data science and data visualization weren't yet the terms. And we were doing a lot of those novel areas. And we were also relying on aggregating huge amounts of data and being able to process that data very fast. I think with hindsight, we had the great idea. I was in love with being enabled to do something different that didn't have to make money tomorrow. So the company I was working with were very cool about that. But the technology wasn't ready, Nicolas, to achieve the outcome that people wanted, which was this knowledge fusion and insights that they could take to the boardroom or could change the outcome of a military operation or change how a casino makes money with its customers. So the aha moment was people didn't know this capability existed. the technology wasn't really scalable or sustainable. We needed a lot of big change that's happened in the last 10 years or so. So we were probably too soon. And therefore, I think the business model was flawed. I think my learning curve was just because it's cool. Maybe you had potentially a lot of stock that you were going to make when it all went well. How will you make it work today? And is there a customer who really is pulling you over the table saying, I need it and I need it now, and I can do with what you have today. That's good enough. And we didn't have all those components to be successful. So that's what I look for when I'm on the other side of the table now, chatting with really awesome new entrepreneurs about their business model. How does it scale? Who's the typical customer zero today? Why do they need it? Why do they need it now? And what is it that you guys and girls do that's different to everyone else that's worth talking to? And sometimes people really get that story and they can convey it very well, do it awesomely. And others, you have to help them get there, Nicola. That's maybe our job, to help polish. And other times it's, hey, come back when you're ready. I don't think you're ready yet. Or maybe we're not a good fit because we're running at a certain pace. And if you can't run at the same pace, we're not going to be a good fit for one another.
So now I want to talk about bias and how it could influence your investment decisions. And here I can even put this in the context of tension. Honeywell Ventures is looking at disruptions in the future, things that have not yet happened. We can sense it could happen. And then you have your bias of that startup that was too soon. You have this sales background where you like to match an immediate need from customers to a product. How do you reconcile this tension between you need to invest when it's typically too soon to the point where you actually want direct connection with the business?
Yeah, that's a good one. Learning, I think, to be more patient. I think we set our stall up originally that we would get near-term results or some eureka event quicker. And when I look at our own internal incubators, they're probably not that fast either, right? So you have to goes back to the empathy word. A lot of startups got founded maybe 10 years ago. They're still starting. They're still getting there, right? And they've pivoted and innovated. And so a startup isn't necessarily a company that's 1 or 2 years old either, right? There's plenty out there that fit both types. So that was, I think, a big lesson that I had to translate back into the corporation.
And I think it touches on the other side of empathy, not just to the entrepreneurs only, but also to the mothership. So let's talk about you being asked to join Honeywell Ventures, which was 1 year ago, you mentioned. Was there a team? How did you think about the team? How did you think about recruitment? What's your current thinking? Because everyone was just joining, even from the mothership into the CVC to lead it. Can you help people how to think about all these questions?
Yeah. So we're tinkerers. I mentioned I like to tinker and fix things, right? So we're trying to engineer and re-engineer our venture initiative in the right way for good reasons. So when I joined a year ago, we did have a team, and I'm very excited. And what we'd agreed was that we'd have people that were dedicated to each of our big P&Ls. We have 5 effectively big P&Ls. And I thought that was really good because that way they don't get organ rejection, right? In terms of recruiting and hiring, it's a special breed. And you and I have talked about this.
Yep.
We talk about athletes. And if you keep with the athletic analog, it's probably a decathlete that we need. Someone who can do 10 things, right, quite well. They have to throw, they have to run, they have to jump, swim, cycle, all those things. So they have to understand how the VC world works and teach me, because I'm still learning, right, how to do that. They have to know how big corporations operate, how, as I mentioned, how things go to scale, how our business processes and our decision-making works. So all that internal navigation is important. They have to have an eye for technology and the differentiation. Look for those things that make a business awesome and competitive, or those areas that will be the derailers that will probably inhibit them from growing. And so they've had cycles of learning. Maybe they've been in roles, maybe banking or investment, A-type roles. That's a very healthy background. Again, people who've had a financial background who can, okay, I love it, but get it down to the numbers. Show me how this will make money, and then show me how your technology or your business model works to do that. In Honeywell, we're blessed that we are surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands, of smart engineers and CTOs and people with an IP background. So I look at that. My team is 100,000 people, Nicola. They just didn't get the memo yet that they work for me. and I work with them all. And we swamp around a particular program or a project or an initiative. So first define the theme and the roadmap area, then get down to a portfolio list of companies that we're excited about, then go on the road and discover and ask questions, do some testing. Can we do some POCs? Many times we find they've already worked with Honeywell. We just didn't know it. So often a lot of it is connecting the dots. Oh, we had this issue. We had this insight. Oh, they changed their name, or the business, our strategy moved and we lost contact. So there's a lot of history part of our job as well, right? That we have to rebuild to do that. So typically we're looking for people that have that curiosity that we mentioned. They get technology, but they don't have to be the technologist. We have plenty of those people that can do it. They get how both sides work in terms of the process, the venture world, the investors, the ecosystem, as well as how corporates work to do that. And then they're tenacious. And do it with a smile on your face every day.
Very nice. Hopefully this video for any of your colleagues watching will serve as a memo that they work for you and Honeywell Ventures. So my next question is about the team building. And clearly I can understand from what you're saying, the value of people from Honeywell, no organ rejection. But how are you thinking about also getting talent from outside Honeywell?
Yeah, I've been very lucky. We've had some opportunities where people have moved on for big promotable opportunities. So first news is corporate VCs. Yes, you can get a promotion into other structures and both inside and outside of the company. So it's a great form, I think, for seeing the whole company. And I definitely recommend it as part of your career, zig and zag, to get in there. And we've been fortunate to bring in some great talent from outside, and they've brought that energy, that sense of what it takes to be successful. Some of them have been in startups themselves, which is really healthy, right? And they really get it. And they understand what it takes for a founder to be successful. And they probably put out the garbage and added up the numbers and try to go hunt and find customers to do that. So the bias is more for the outside coming in, because I think they will do very well, be efficient. And like I said, we can match them up with people that know the strategy and the technology very quickly. But also, Nicola, we're looking for people that can take the next two roles. And those next two roles probably won't be in corporate VC. They might be in a P&L role or an offering or a product management role or a strategy role. How can I bring great talent on board and lose them very quickly? That's actually the fifth goal that every Honeywell people manager has. Everyone has 4 goals in Honeywell. Number 5 is people. And how do you build a bench? And how do you get that bench really diverse and high quality? And then how do you lose them? I'm probably going to get compensated and recognized as much for that as I am for, hey, wow, you brought this amazing company into our ecosystem as well.
That's a golden nugget, which I have not heard in all the past 50 plus interview, which is the CVC as a talent pipeline for the mothership. And so let's double click, because that's such a good golden nugget. How do you interview with that in the back of your mind?
I don't think I'm the best interviewer. You can tell I do a lot of talking, right? So I try to slow down a little bit, and one interview probably is never going to be enough to do that. But I am interested in people that I just like their career paths. And I often push back with my HR partners when they say, hey, this person's had a lot of, we call it zigging and zagging, and maybe within a company or maybe outside of other companies. And I look at them and go, me too. I'm getting a little older now, so maybe I'm slowing down, but I've been blessed to have opportunities, and I haven't taken them all, by the way, but even within the company to go to the next and the next position. So I do like someone who's willing and able to take some intelligent risk in their career. And it's going to be different for every person because of their family life or where they are or their background. But I am super proud when I see people who we would never have thought of now having executive roles in the corporate headquarters. And when you look at their humble beginnings, we kind of laugh and go, hey, we're those people that we looked up to 20 years ago. We're now doing those jobs. So I look at people that they've taken some healthy risk. They're curious and they're asking questions, they tell me more about the company. They've done their research. And again, it's beyond the role.
And so what would be the type of red flags or yellow flags when you're interviewing?
I start to write down the words I, me, and mine. So when I hear a lot of I did this, me, then I get worried that this person, maybe they're awesome and they're a unique innovator, but you don't get those kind of jobs done at scale on your own. And
Never.
so I look for the humility of how you become a team player, team builder. Tell me about how you helped Brian or Paul or Jane get the next role, or how did you bring others to make that consensus decision? Because that's not easy to do, right? And this job is going to be about cultivating and placating and communicating with our partner companies, but also internally. And you might get one established and then the other one gets concerned and you have to bring them both.
Now, you just mentioned something is hard to measure. So how are you thinking about your KPIs, your team's KPIs, how they relate to both adding value to entrepreneurs, to portfolio companies, to Honeywell?
Yeah, we like to scorecard the heck out of everything. They're often more of a green, red, yellow. It's hard to put numbers to everything. We've got 5 KPIs that we use routinely every quarter, and we try to get them as leading indicators wherever possible. First one is, are we still strategically aligned? Often the strategy evolves or changes, or that PowerPoint from 2021 was just a PowerPoint, and did it really manifest, right, as a strategy? So we keep going back to check how critical and vital we are to each other's growth and existence. So that's the first levels. The next one is on the technology milestones. Clearly, is it differentiated? But not only are they hitting, the partner hitting their milestones, Nicolas, but also maybe we promised that we would integrate with them or have an API, or we would put their product inside our IoT device or firmware. Is that happening, right? And why not? And what can we do to get out and push the boat and get that faster? Then we look at C for co-commercialization. So are they hitting their numbers? So they might be pre-revenue. So are they hitting their burn rate the way they said to the timeline? Or maybe they're revenue generating, and are they hitting their ARR, et cetera, that we wanted? And then maybe we signed up to do some co-sales.
Very nice. And Patrick, what type of check size, what type of series you like to invest? How high can you go?
We have a playbook and then we break the rules every time, but now I know I'm breaking the rules. Yes. Typically a check size for us is about 4 to 5 million US. Usually somewhere late seed, A's and B's are very exciting for us. We do follow on, and we have also invested in C's and D's, but they're normally because we've seen an equity play maybe towards leading to even an M&A type strategy or informing an M&A strategy to do that. So it goes right across many different sectors. And by the way, we're not located in North America only. In fact, we're deliberately trying to break the mold and do more in Europe and other parts of the world that we're not known for today.
Very nice. Patrick, I want to thank you for sharing your journey and all the golden nuggets and tips along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolas. You're doing a great job for us all. Thank you so much.